there's research funders, there's a whole plethora of different people, and the big struggle for organisations or entities trying to get themselves funded through this is trying to be able to speak the variety of different languages that are looking to talk to them and go through the very different funding communities with different expectations at different stages in their development. So it may be tempting to go for grant money, and actually then you'll be building your metrics and your way of engaging around the grant community. But then as you want to expand out into actually broadening and scaling, you've got to change your culture quite significantly in order to achieve a different kind of financing. I was really entertained to see the revenue equity models being proposed in this area as well, because we looked at those from 10 years ago in the social sector as well. I think they've got relevance here. So I do think there is a need for different funding structures, and there's a real need for, and I was really enjoying the panel just now, investors where they are really clear as they invest in something for where the model is misaligned between impact and finance, and how they manage that misalignment. Because it's all very well to say, oh, we invest in things which are fully in line. The more impact they have, the more return we get. Actually, an awful lot of investments have some of those features, and then some areas where there's a real decision to make between finance. Look at microfinance, for example. It's a great example of where, as you've got a flood of money coming into that marketplace, the lack of wider regulatory features around that meant that you've actually had quite a lot of damaging lending going on, because the investment community thought micro-lending is good, and actually somewhat again. So I think as we look at this AI space, it's even more important that those features of investors being really clear where they're making decisions, who and in between investment return and impact, how those being taken, and that they're transparent with those investees that they've got is going to be a key feature if we're going to get this marketplace right.
I'm going to pick up one of your points, which was that the venture capital is the easy part. And I would say, so I would agree that it is the easiest part, and this is kind of where we're operating mostly. So my background, just 10 years in venture capital, and then I retrained in machine learning. I'm currently running an accelerator program for machine intelligence startups here in London. And those startups have all got really well-intentioned founders who are building products that people want, that are additive to the economy. They're creating meaningful, good jobs, and then will pay their taxes when they become profitable. So that's kind of the lowest bar of impact, really, maybe in this context. But nonetheless, I think that's a good thing to do. But AI ethics has kind of climbed the hype curve after AI, in a sense, and we're all very interested in it. Investors are very interested in understanding from a risk mitigation point of view in the first instance, whether you have considered the ethics of what you're doing, but also hopefully moving more into a kind of opportunity point of view, so there should be a competitive advantage to developing responsibly in the AI space. However, it's not easy to translate aspirations to viability. There are lots of features of machine learning in particular that makes that hard. Some of it is to do with it being stochastic, non-deterministic, the ability to scale very fast and to embed biases that are in data very broadly. And there's something as well about the perception of agency as well that creates lots of problems. So one of the things that we're trying to help with at the Catapult is all of the startups that join us get access to an external team of ethics advisory board people that can help them think through those implications. So I don't want to, it's not a massive advert. I think this is a really small thing that we do, but it's absolutely central to being able to present yourself to investors and to customers going forward.
It's hard to follow. Back to the question of, is the investment sort of landscape or the investment world fit for purpose for AI for good? No, it isn't. And that's mostly due to disruption and speed still being the norm over sort of critical examinations when it comes to AI products, especially when it comes to questions around whether AI products are fair, whether the use is going to be, whether it's going to be used by the right people, whether it's going to be accessible, whether all the challenges that are part, sort of bread and butter of machine learning and decision making, which is around accountability, lack of transparency, and it can potentially be used as a sort of propellant for misinformation, computational misinformation, you name it. There's a really good strategic paper actually from Mozilla, who sort of defined all of the different challenges that exist when it comes to machine learning and machine decision making as well, so worthwhile reading. But all of that means, with regards to the VC industry, where you still see the emphasis on going fast and breaking things, sadly, that you do not have enough of sort of pre-seed or seed stage investors who can put their money where their mouth is, and essentially put money forward to impact-driven businesses who want to use those particular AI products and services in their businesses, but who do not have the necessary research and development budgets to do that fairly, or to do that in an accessible way. One of the ways that I hope my organization and my company where I work at is changing and moving the needle is through early stage investing in tech for good more specifically. And a lot of it that we see come through our doors is now focused on AI and blockchain and all the insert your tech buzzword here, essentially. But one of the key things is that we invest in a very early stage ventures through a sort of particular accelerator program, but provide follow-on investing as well, especially because the norms of what now is meant to be a seed stage or even a Series A round has shifted so dramatically that there is just not enough early stage capital available, and that's why companies like Social Tech Trust, for example, or other sort of pre-seed and seed stage funders are so necessary in the space now to actually plug that mid-stage capital gap as well. Bethnal Green Ventures, again, that's sort of early stage investing. We've invested in tech for good before it was cool, since 2012 essentially. And we've invested in over 120 ventures, of which more than 75 are still active. A few of them are actually here, which is really cool. And our ventures have sort of gone on to raise 80 million in further investment, which sort of, with regards to the previous panel, shows that there is a significant sort of increase in more investments for impact-driven ventures as well, and hopefully sort of shows a positive sort of development that there are more angel investors, there are more VC funds, there are more traditional investors who don't necessarily define themselves as impact investors themselves, who want to put their money where their mouth is. So, yeah.
Value of time, which in my mind is way more precious than money, because you're never going to get that back. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for helping the entrepreneurs grow in that kind of space, and enables for sort of better collaboration and maybe more sort of mindful, slow, considered growth, which I think is really needed. So I think a lot of change still needs to happen. I really loved Kate mentioning, you know, a whole new set of opportunities for growth. And you know, all of us looking at it. And Libby, I was reading earlier online your amazing sort of document, which sort of talks about all the different layers of ethics and the sort of governance structure around that. So I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen around that. And the less we continue to just reinforce the narrative of you know, quick growth and exit and just make or break, the more opportunity we have for making a real difference. So yeah, to keep it short in the interest of time, patience and ethics, I guess, is where we really need to focus.
Sorry.
Again, the panel's too big for the stage either. A high-tech solution.
Yeah, wait for it. Okay, what's the challenge? Well, I've invested in 190 startups since 2014, and I invest at the seed and pre-seed stage. And the chance of for me, on average, to get return every time I invest is 6%. Who here does anything in life where you have a 94% chance of failure? So the real problem in basically investing at seed, and I suspect most of the audience here is seed, is it doesn't pay to invest at seed. You need idiots like me to keep on doing it and keep on not learning and keep on doing it again and again. Because the people that normally invest in seed, like Naidoo, get wise and go up the chain to invest in Series A or Series B, where the chances of return are 18 and 40%. So how do we convince, who here has invested as an angel? I've invested 45 times. I'm the biggest idiot in the room. Kind of like, and yet, none of you, all of you are keen, but why don't you put your own money into it? Kind of all of you are keen, but why you probably got savings, you probably got houses, you probably got basic cars, but you don't basically put, and that's the big challenge, of course, is how do we create a basic environment where it pays to back innovation? Whether it's in AI, which I believe is a good opportunity to see, put your money in it, or doing a basic AI where you want to make such an impact. And I suspect that's the kind of key question that we need to put innovation around. I have some ideas put forward today, but that's the challenge.
Great, thank you. So I want to pick up on something that came up in the panel earlier around the kind of homogeneous nature of people in investment. Because I read an article, actually I didn't read an article, I read a stub of an article because I hadn't subscribed to the service, and it was behind a paywall, this week, which was entitled Venture Capital is Getting Woke. And it was referring to the growing amount of kind of diversity and inclusion initiatives in the VC space. Because I only read the stub, I don't really know how the article ended, but maybe some of you can let me know. But I would love to hear what you think the role of diversity and inclusion, not only in VC, but in the kind of larger investment, early stage investment in particular spaces, both in terms of supporting more diverse people within investment, but also the founders and thus the tech they're creating. And Dama, if I could come to you for that would be great.
So it's kind of fun to talk about our team. We at Bethnal Green Ventures, we are 11 people, 13 with our venture partners, and we are largely all women. None of us, we're 9 women, 3 men. Is my math correct? No, it's not. But none of us went to Oxbridge. We have various sort of socioeconomic backgrounds. We've got an impact report coming out that lists all of that fun data because we've sort of looked at our entire team as well. But in terms of the sort of investment decisions that need to be made and the sort of homogeneous nature of different sort of VCs and funds and you name it, the capital that is being spent by angel investors, it's true, it's still largely going to male founders, male founder teams. The BBCA, Diversity VC, and the British Business Bank released a report last year that says that less than 1p of every pound is going from VC money goes less than 1p goes to female founded businesses. In 2018, how crazy is that statistic? That less than 1p of every pound goes to female founded businesses. And on the back of that report, because it still blows my mind that this is still a statistic that holds true in this day and age. We looked at all of our investment decisions at Bethnal Green Ventures and can proudly say that in 2018, 44p of every pound went into female-founded businesses, 26p of every pound into mixed-gender teams, and the rest to male-founded teams. It's great on sort of gender parity, but obviously diversity means so much more. Socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnic minority backgrounds, neurodiversity, sexual orientation, and there just needs to be a significant sort of shift in the VC industry, but just generally in terms of how investment decisions are being published and how much money actually goes into the industry, to actually showcase that all the funds that are now embracing diversity and inclusion are actually also making those commitments, are actually putting their money towards those diverse teams and actually making good on their sort of bold statements that are investing into more diverse teams as well. And one really easy step is to sort of engage with sort of initiatives like Capital Enterprise does One Tech, and there is a founder store that was also supported by NBS Ventures, so helping more diverse, underrepresented founders to actually get to the point that they can access capital. Mentoring is so incredibly crucial and helpful at that particular point. Introductions to different VC funds is still the norm. Open sort of office hours that VC funds. Future VCs, if you're a VC fund, commit to actually getting a person from an underrepresented background into venture capitalism. But on the flip side as well, just ensure that you have the possibilities to meet underrepresented founders and increase the diversity as well. And the other bit that is not necessarily the VC world is increased diversity in the engineering space. So the more, this is something that Gian Brewer loves to say, and it's the saying of around the more diverse the product is, the more you focus on making your product more accessible, the better the outcomes, the more equal the outcomes can be. So look at the whole supply chain of where, at the whole product roadmap, increase the sort of accessibility of your product by just introducing more people into the product development as well, from more diverse backgrounds.
Can you use the example you said earlier, immigration?
Oh yeah, so this is a bit of personal information. I am European, so I had to use the Home Office Android app to apply for settled status, and the AI computer said no, and the AI would not scan my face. And that is at the level for Home Office. So you should consider that at the sort of government level, there's a rigorous process to ensure that there's no discrimination in the tech that they're using for immigration purposes. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Dama. And I think Toby wanted to say something on this one as well.
Just briefly, I guess, one of the key elements on this is simply that the white men need to do work, and that's kind of obvious. But I guess social finance, 60% women, reasonably diverse but not sufficiently diverse. As we started really thinking about this properly 3 or 4 years ago, the one thing I would say to other white men knocking around the place, if there are any, is that demonstrating real engagement and pleasure in getting feedback to understand where your subconscious biases lie opens the conversation in an extraordinary way and starts to change culture. But until you're not defensive in your response, it won't actually change. And that, I think, in terms of changing organizational culture, is just what I would personally say as a starting point.
Absolutely. So as Will said, I think it's important that we end on a positive note. So my final question, which I would love for you all to answer, is what is one development that is coming up in 2020 that makes you hopeful about the possibility of investment scale in AI for good? And if any of you have examples that any startups that are in the audience that are looking for investment can particularly look out for, and that might be hopeful for them in the kind of scale and challenges they've got in the next 12 months, it would be fantastic if you could highlight those two. And John, maybe I'll start with you this time.
Capital Enterprise is actually not for profit. We set up a program called One Tech, and we basically got people that weren't pale, male and stale to run it, and that funds Diversity VC, it funds Founders Fund, it funds UK Black Tech. Basically, it funds a whole kind of ecosystem to try and address the diversity issue, which is right. It's actually particularly gender and actually particularly black in London don't have the opportunities, and it's worse than you even think. And actually, always people are outside it in the professional services are always shocked. If you are a male team, the worst thing you can do to reduce the chances of raising is have a female co-founder. So if you change from basically a mixed team to a male team, it massively increases your chances of funding. How sick is that? So there is lots to do. So it's actually even worse in construction, and that's saying something. So tech has a long way to go on that, and it requires people who are in positions like myself to accept that, and I think you're quite right. On good things, the good things I think are coming forward. I've invested heavily in AI. I think it's amazing. I think AI itself can bring massive basic benefits. Someone said an example today. A company that I met 7 years ago out of Imperial called Touch Surgery, now called Digital Surgery, just got an enormous exit, bought by a big American company. And that basically takes machine learning into from training to automating surgery. Now you might think that's really scary, but to create surgeons in the developing country, it takes 10 years. And at the moment, the skill gap is the biggest problem in the developing countries about improving basic medical health. You can see that in China at the moment. So kind of things such as that will have a major impact. Investors have made money. The team's going to build even a bigger product. That's what we need. I need a whole list of companies that are doing AI and basically generating positive impact to be successful. So everyone will change their attitudes.
Great. And Liv, if you could keep your one hopeful thing to one sentence, because I think we only have 3 minutes left, that would be fantastic.
So I generally, I think with the AI of all the industries, I'm excited but cautious, and I like to be optimistic, but in this case, I like to think of the worst case scenarios, just so that we can look to put the right governance structures in place and ethics in order to prevent these at a later stage. I think we tend to get a little bit overexcited, and then I think with AI, if we forget to think about certain potential negative outcomes when they happen, then at that point it's too late. So I'm very excited to hear a sort of growing debate on that, and I'd love to see a slower progress in AI in order to be able to really think about this before we really look to scale a lot of these companies.
I think a positive sort of development for both entrepreneurs as well as investors is that there is a lot more scrutiny when it comes to whether a company uses AI now. At least I might be in my bubble, so don't take this for granted. But there is not everyone who helps you determine how you can think about your unintended consequences. At the larger sort of spectrum, you've got Atomico now, who are coming out with their conscious scaling sort of workshops and methodology, who really think about how you can ensure that as an impact-driven business or as an impact-driven entrepreneur, you can think about really addressing some of the negative sort of consequences, impacts that any tech solution can have on society and people, and really sort of mitigate those particular risks effectively, which is really, really hard to do, especially when you're sort of in the early stages of thinking about, hey, you just want to have positive impact on people's lives and protect the planet. So yeah, looking at these particular resources and joining a community like this. So the AI for Good community is a wonderful sort of tribe, so it's definitely worthwhile just continue on coming to those particular community events, especially because there's pizza later.
Causes for optimism. This one's easy. When we're having this conversation. So when I entered venture capital in 2004, to mention any interest in impact or mission or purpose was to be met with suspicion, not to say derision. I don't know whether Toby remembers those times. And there are other people in the room, of course, that have been at the forefront of making this much, much more mainstream, such that, as you've mentioned, the likes of Atomico have got it absolutely at the forefront of their thinking. So yeah, lots of reason to be cheerful.
I guess 2 or 3 things. One is
Pick one.
I think the massive increase in it's your fault.
Yeah.
The potential in international development for very low cost output verification has the potential to totally scale and change the way that international development works, so it can become transparent and adaptive, as it is Naidoo. That's something I'm very excited about.
Great, thank you. Gillian, do we have time for some audience questions?
5 minutes. However,
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's maybe give the audience an option first. Yeah, one here.
Yeah, good question.
Maybe just stand up.
Yeah, okay. I'm Raphael Olaya. I'm from a clinical background, so I'm an emergency doctor, and I'm around a lot of clinical entrepreneurs. And I think there's a bit of a disconnect between biotechnology and more clinical orientated, more for profit than for social good. But a lot of the startups are for social good, and I think the social good investors aren't really connected with them as much. If you're going to give a definition for clinical entrepreneurs for social good as opposed to more clinical orientated, more biotech, how would you do that so they can understand it and come to you as opposed to being kind of covered by people that are more interested in clinical biology, biotech?
Is anyone an expert in the biotech space that can answer that? Toby, is that you? Put your hand.
Okay. I think the question I would start with is, so the question I would start off with is focusing on the impact outcomes that you're looking to achieve, and then see where there are investors with a focus on those outcomes, and start with an outcome narrative. I'm happy to talk more about it if I understand more about what you're doing, but that would be my starting point. And I agree, I think the clinical sector is one. It's a little bit like the AI sector. They don't feel they understand it well enough, so they can't diligence it. So then you also have to help explain it to them in words of one syllable, which is slightly awkward. So.
John?
All I can say is I've invested in quite a few doctors, and I'm not embarrassed when I take people that have been trained very expensively for 7, 8, 9, 10 years as doctors and turn them into entrepreneurs. Because I would say as an entrepreneur you may be able to make a bigger impact. You may be able to not just serve the patients that you can see, but the patients that are around the world. And so I don't think there's a compromise. I think you might be able to do both and basically retrieve massive impact in your field, basically generate a return for their investors like in ours, and also basically do good. So why compromise?
Yeah, can we take Libby's question? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just to make a comment on that, we've got tech that mediates cortisol, that mediates downstream cytokines, interleukin 6. So there's a clinical link there in terms of tech doing something you normally associate with a drug. Luckily, I'm on a panel at FENS later on this year, the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies, to talk to life science people to say get into tech. Tech needs life science people, needs clinical people to get into it, to help us drive those outcomes that we know that tech can deliver. And I think it's the alignment of tech and medical development that I think will bring about some of the greatest innovations in the near future. And AI is going to drive so much of that in terms of digital profiling and that type of thing. So it's a really exciting time. If you're, thank God you're in it, you're in it at the right time, I think. And it's that alignment which I think will bring back those benefits.
Get Libby's question.
Maybe this is more of a crowdsourcing thing for Peter afterwards. So I'm a bit of a fraud as well. I joined this panel hoping to find out the answer to the question. This this is the question. So AI at least has been mooted as having the potential to solve really big problems for UN Sustainable Development Goals. But often these things require multiple stakeholders over multiple jurisdictions with silos of data held by multiple different people. And they might not result in profitable businesses. That is what I want to know how to fund. Does anyone know?
Oh, yes.
I think that's what the AI for Good community is all about. So yeah, I would suggest that we all take that question out to the hall and discuss it over pizza, because I think that we're at time. But definitely I think that the AI for Good community, and obviously Alice will speak to this more than me, but is basically answering that question. And I think that this is the first of one event that they're doing on this topic, but exactly to that end. So thank you so much to everyone on the panel and also to the audience, and let's eat some pizza.
Guys, one tiny announcement. When people were coming in, they were asked if they want to be recognized as an investor. So every time you see a person with an orange dot, it means the person who is currently investing. And please don't be shy, approach them, talk to them about what they do. And listen to it, drink some pizzas.